So guys, Till the Coast is Clear is a community interest company that was founded in 2018. And basically I founded it in response to my own sort of personal angst and frustration at what I was seeing out in nature in the place that I live and love, and all the other places I visit, lucky enough to visit, around our country and further afield on occasion. And it genuinely is, it's kind of I suppose, a labor of love. It's just something that I just felt quite passionately that I had to get involved with. And, I did ask all my friends, family, etc., and they just told me to stop moaning and bleating on about it and do something about it. So that was kind of that was the permission to do it. So this image is from Pembrokeshire National Park in Wales, where I was for a short break with my wife for one of her friends' anniversaries or something like that. And I was just going for a morning jog. And I think this was the third or fourth pile of plastic pollution and rubbish that I encountered. And this wasn't new to me, of course, but for some reason on this particular morning, it just really got to me. And I just found it so distressing and just so unacceptable that not only was my morning run being ruined by the sight of all this plastic pollution in such a beautiful place, which again, it's the only entirely coastal national park in the country. I just thought it's absolutely ridiculous that this is the case. And I knew from experience that this is not isolated to here by any means, as we all now know only too clearly. So this is literally the day that it all started. I decided there and then that I was going to quit the job I was doing at the time, which frankly wasn't really exciting me at all, although necessary, of course, to pay the bills. But I guess we'll come to that a bit later. So I jogged back, told my wife I was leaving my job, buying a boat, and was going to start clearing up plastic for a living. So scenes like this also added to my angst and motivation, to get going with this. That's a local scene. It's not uncommon, over the last 6 months, year, it's become increasingly common with avian bird flu, etc. This was prior to that, but I don't know how the gannet met its demise, but I think surrounded like it is, this is how I found it on Wallsands Beach. It's fair to say that the plastic isn't doing it any good. More scenes of, what we encounter every day. I don't know if you guys, or certainly hope you guys don't encounter this every day. It's far too depressing to do that unless you're involved in it sort of professionally or as a volunteer or a hobbyist or anything else. But this is the reality of many parts of our coastline, and it's pretty dire. More local scenes. I think it's important to show, I've thrown the background out of focus, but look at these beautiful places. They're just absolutely spectacular. And of course, we want them selfishly to be that way for our own enjoyment and our own, mental health, if you like. But of course, most of our first considerations is the marine animals, birds, etc., that live amongst this rubbish and make a home in it often. And that to me is just completely unacceptable. And it's just a damning indictment of our, disregard for their homes and our own home for that matter. So, I guess this is about doing something to help tackle a problem that you see. And as the old saying goes, if you see something that needs doing, it's often best just to get on with it yourself, isn't it? So more local scenes of, the kind of thing we encounter regularly. And this is really quite an important stage on our little journey. And when I thought about having a boat, and I wasn't at this stage aware of any other clear up operations. I hadn't looked into it. I hadn't known anything about it. I'd heard of SAS, Surface Against Sewage, of course, as everybody ought to have had, but I wasn't aware of any specialist plastic pollution recovery outfits or volunteer groups or anything like that. Having said that, I hadn't searched for them either. I just used to do my own thing as most folk do. Anyway, so the boat was very much front and central to our plan, because previous experience in other roles had taught me that if you seek too many no's, you'll find them. So by asking permission to cross people's land and pick up litter from shoreside, I knew I'd come into a barrage of risk assessments and no's and scratching heads and hands on chins and things. So I thought, right, I'm going to get a boat. So I'm just going to come in like a sort of a Royal Marine with a litter picker, if you like, and then we're going to jump on the beach, we're going to clear up the rubbish, and we're going to be gone before anyone's even realised. And we don't really, we're not bothered about getting a slap on the back or anything else. We just want this rubbish, this garbage off our coast. So that's what we did. The difficulty was explaining to folk what we were actually intending to do and why it was important and everything else. So I saw this Lego boat in a toy shop, and I said to the kids, right, can you build this for me? And I'm going to stick some stickers on it, and I'm going to go and start talking to people about helping us do this work. And that's literally how it happened. So the first folk I took it to go and see was Coastal Recycling, an Exeter-based, now employee-owned business, which is it's a large material recycling facility, a resources recapture organisation, and they have been fantastic as sponsors, partners for the last sort of 4 or 5 years. In fact, we had their crew out with us only yesterday, in fact, or the day before yesterday, which is just tremendous. So we do team days with all of our partners and sponsors, which is incredibly rewarding for everyone involved. Anyway, so a huge thank you to Coastal Recycling. Then I went to see Rockfish and so forth. And basically what we were offering them was a chance to be part of this cleanup effort and, in a sense, sponsor it. So by having a boat, I'm going to come back to that one, by having a boat, and here's our boat, you can see straight away that there was these little spaces on the side which were quite opportune in that they lent themselves well to sponsorship positioning. So I thought, if we could sell those spaces for whatever we can get for them, we might be able to raise enough to keep the boat on the water and pay for fuel and bags and all the rest of it. And that's literally how it happens. So we've been incredibly fortunate. Our timing was fortuitous. There was some, Blue Planet was on TV, and I think that was the pivotal point for many, many marine charities and many others as well. It was a tipping point, a positive tipping point that opened people's eyes to the problems out there, and for us, the phone started ringing. So that's how our model basically works. We have now complemented the sponsorship and partnership system with grants from charities, etc., non-governmental organizations, and that's now increasingly important to our model. But it's very important that we underpin it with sponsorship and continue to do that. So moving on quickly, the boat is a brilliant bit of kit. It's made from recyclable plastic. It's not recycled plastic, much to my annoyance, and we did ask the company to consider making another one out of recycled plastic, which is eminently doable, but like so many other organizations, they're reticent to change and take a bit of a punt. Not that it is really a punt, in my opinion. The materials are there. We know you can use marine recycled plastic for making really good high value quality items with no drop in performance or UV stability or color fastness, etc. So it can be done. But anyway, the boat's made from recyclable plastic. And it's a brilliant workhorse. It's flat bottomed. It's got a bow door like a landing craft, and it really takes a hammering. We've got a prop guard on it. We can get into 8 inches of water. It's a really fantastic bit of kit. It can take over 500 kilos payload, 5 or 6 folk at a time, and it's just proven to be brilliant, and it enables us to do what we do. So this is the kind of scenery that we pull up onto in perfect conditions. On my dad, it doesn't work like this all the time. It can be pretty dicey out there sometimes, but we tend not to work in bad weather. It just doesn't function. You don't achieve much. You just burn fuel, waste time. So we've learned to be pretty picky and choosy when we go out. So another shot of the boat. This is in Plymouth, I think Drake's Island, and we had a call from the historian there to help him clear up some plastic that he'd been collecting over a year or two. So we went out and did a couple of boat loads back to port, and again, it just shows you how versatile it is. Another shot from Plymouth. We've been doing quite a bit of work over in Plymouth with Plymouth City Council and the National Marine Park, trying to keep the foreshores free of this kind of plastic pollution, which is it's abundant in the Sound. Unfortunately, it's a big commercial, busy place, so it's in some respect to be expected. But it never ceases to amaze me how much you can find and how often you go back to the same place and find it as bad as it was the first time, which is a bit depressing. But at least over time, a positive difference is being made. So more scenes from the one on the left is from our beautiful Kingsbridge Salcombe Estuary where we're based. And there's a friend of mine and a crew member for the day who came out, and he was blown away by what we were picking up. And it's really quite astounding, especially when it looks from afar or 100 meters out that the beach is clean. And oftentimes you've sort of gone past saying, oh yeah, that place looks pristine. And I know from experience now that if you land, you will find, from micros upwards, you will find a lot of plastic pollution. Incidentally, that's Comrade Humphreys from Plymouth, sailor, who crewed for us for a day and often does, pulling a monofilament line that was half buried in rubble from a storm, I guess. There's a video of that, which is pretty amusing. More scenes in the boat, just operationally how effective it is. You can literally sort of not ram it up on the rocks per se, but you can certainly bring it in really close enough to hop off, keep your feet dry, and you can load up really, really quickly and efficiently. So it saves so much time and effort doing it this way. And don't recommend that technique necessarily, but it works and it gets you into all these nooks and crannies. So, this is a video, and let's see, there we go. So cue the Benny Hill music. You can just see how effective it is. This is a regular method we use, just wading out to the boat so it doesn't get knocked around on the rocks too much. The kayaks you can see there, we'll come on to in a second, but they're fundamental to what we do as well. Absolutely superb bits of kit. There we go. So that's how it actually works. We regularly tow the kayaks behind the boat. So when the weather isn't perfect and you can't land on the beach, we anchor off, say 100 yards out beyond the break, and we use the kayaks to go ashore. And they're superb. Like I say, they're just so versatile. They're hardy bits of kit. And once you get used to them, you can paddle them in pretty hairy conditions, and you can also load them up with tons of stuff, which is another bonus. So the kayaks are brilliant. We call them Sea Wombles. We've got 4, and these are made by Odyssey Innovation, Rob Thompson's outfit down in Cornwall. We've had them a few years now, so I think Rob's moved on from this model, but they are superb bits of kit. There we go, towing the boats. This is one in action. So you can see you can get another 100 kilos plus yourself on board one of these things. Sometimes you can paddle them as doubles as well. So 2 of us will paddle one and use the other one as a barge and tow it behind. That's been an effective method as well. But like I say, great bit of kit. You may notice we use wooden paddles, of course. If there's an option to use something that's natural, not plastic, then even if there is a price disadvantage, i.e. it's more expensive for that privilege, then we tend to try our hardest to take that route. And it's obviously a principle that we should all try and stick to, but it's very, very difficult when you're presented with much cheaper options a lot of the time. But the wooden paddles are fantastic. They're light, they're warm to the touch, they're beautiful. They look fantastic, and yeah, I wouldn't do without them. More kayak shots and friends and crew members getting involved. And of course, this talk is supposed to be all about community, and I very much wanted to be, and I haven't actually mentioned it yet, so I apologize. But the whole reason why we do what we do is about our community. And I suppose by community, I don't just mean about our local community, i.e. where I live, where I work, where I grew up, etc. I think it's interesting when we set up the CIC, which I didn't go back to either, apologies. That was one of the main questions when you found the CIC. You have to, very clearly state who your community is, who will you be serving, who are your customers, if you like, being a limited, limited by guarantee CIC, not for profit, but an organization that exists to serve the environment and its community. So community is an interesting one. I've now realized that community, which at the time to me meant my immediate surroundings, the people who I see most days or interact with at work or locally, of course, it's a much broader there's a much broader term I've now discovered. And of course, it's very important because if we look at all this from a community level, I think it is enormously important to focus on your immediate surroundings, because otherwise the whole thing's too overwhelming, and you're less likely to get involved with something. But of course, community can mean, regional, national, global, and in this age of fantastic technology such as the one we're using tonight, there's no reason that you can't contribute to a community positively in this regard somewhere around the world, even if it isn't on your own doorstep. So that's kind of what the community element of this is all about. It's getting involved with other amazing like-minded folk who are making personal sacrifices, giving up careers, doing something positive because they just passionately feel that they're not doing, they're not making a difference to themselves or the problems we face. So there we go, just a little explanation on community. More general shots of folk out and about having fun. It is one of the great privileges of this is being outside almost the whole time. I'm not an office boss. I think this is the first time I've worn a shirt for a while that's not covered in seaweed and other muck. But we go to some incredible places, and it's really opened my eyes even more to why we need to protect our coastline, our environment, nature in general, and give it, the absolute support that it needs. It should be front and central of all of our decisions all of the time. It's our life support system, so why wouldn't it be? Beautiful, beautiful places. There we go. There's a friend Rob dragging a boat full of stuff to the water's edge. We've started. There's the boat, a couple of kayaks. That's again in Plymouth Sound. The shot on the right, I think that's a video again. Actually, let's see. But we've started experimenting using paddle boards as well, and they're proving to be really quite effective. If we can't fit the kayaks on the boat, or they're a bit cumbersome for where we're heading, a paddle board is much, much lighter, a little more maneuverable. You obviously have to treat it with a bit more respect and care, but I think there's a place for those in this regard as well. Okay, so here's the boats being used by some staff from Rockfish, who, as you may have seen at the beginning, are one of our partners and sponsors and have been right from the get-go, really. So again, we're very grateful for their support. They work very closely with the Devon Environment Foundation, and they distribute funds to many grassroots environmental organizations who are trying to make a difference, sort of from the bottom up, if you like. So it's incredibly empowering and inspirational, frankly, being involved with DEF and Rockfish to try and help solve problems, which they're very aware are partly caused by all of our activities and our buying habits and our eating habits, certainly. So it's great to be working with them to try and improve the situation, make the industry more sustainable, if possible, and to help consumers make broader and more kind of sustainable choices. But another great thing that we do with all the staff, as I mentioned, is we get out as often as we can, and we try and do interesting and fun things, but ultimately worthwhile things that also make a difference on the ground. So yeah, we do sort of harbour litter picks with the crew at Brixham, which is always good fun and always worthwhile. More scenes to showing. I suppose we haven't really talked about the kind of pollution that we're encountering, and I do call it pollution. It's not litter. It's a lot of this stuff is pollution in the sense that it didn't get here by accident a lot of the time. There's no disguising the fact. It doesn't. You guys will all have noticed that many of these photos showcase commercial fisheries pollution. And that is the absolute reality. There's no getting away, no hiding from that fact. By weight and volume, I would say 65–70% of what we recover on our coast is commercial fisheries. A significant amount beyond that is even recreational fisheries as well, and not just the kit and gear that they use for catching fish or shellfish, etc. It's also lots of other things that are associated with living on board vessels for extended periods of time, clothing and all that sort of thing as well. I worked on a boat about 20 years ago, thinking it would be a great thing to do for the summer. I lasted 3 days, not because of the labour involved or seasick or anything else. I loved that, but it was what happened on board that troubled me the most. And I won't go into that now, but it's another one of the reasons why I do what I do today. So more teams out on the boat in lovely conditions here. I think this is the guys from Coastal Recycling out for the day. As I mentioned, it's so important to enjoy these places. It's not just about the graft. It's about, you know, awareness, education, learning, and we all learn from each other, of course, all the time. This is Sawmill Cove, beautiful beach. We go there regularly. Unfortunately, at the moment, like many of the Southwest orientated beaches, inundated with you know, pre-production plastic nurdles, if you like, bio beads possibly. Not to mention all the other larger stuff, but it's a lot of these beaches are absolutely festooned with thousands of pellets. There must have been a container burst or a release somewhere, and hey ho, it's all coming ashore now. So we've now got some infrastructure in place in about 9 to 10 locations around the coast between Plymouth and Tor Bay, and we're going to double that this year. And as I don't need to tell you about the problems we have with general litter and people's, you know, inability to read labels, put things in the right bins, recycle properly. Unfortunately, it you know, it just doesn't work. And I think you'll agree that the labeling on this bin is relatively clear. It kind of spells it out. I even got you know, a doggy, no doggy do sticker put on there, especially. Neither of them work. It's okay in the winter, but as soon as the tourists, etc., begin to arrive and their, you know, their minds are on other things, it's just a bin, and the whole sort of separation of waste completely goes out of the window, which I know is a massive frustration for our recycling partners and indeed ourselves when we have to sort through it. But anyway, what is really good is that it is beginning to make a difference during the winter months, and the amount of mixing up and contamination is reducing gradually. It's all about where you put the bins. If you put them near a car park, near a busy public beach, it's not going to work. We've always specialized in getting to areas that, you know, regular beach cleans can't reach, that are inaccessible, you know, either by foot, you've got to arrive by boat, kayak, etc., or you've got to climb down a cliff or a steep cliff path. Those are the sort of places where this technique does work, because the folk who go there, they know the score. They're there because they want to be on their own. They respect the landscape, and they pack in, you know, and they pack out what they pack in. Basically, they're not expecting someone else to take responsibility for the waste they brought in themselves. So it can work really well. This one's at Fellstone Golf Club, and it's one of those that works pretty well most of the time. So, well, there you go. On the right, you've got a scene of, that's very typical. The bin's full. Folk have done the right thing, or the logical thing. They've left all the excess stuff that won't fit in the bin in front of the bin, which I guess makes perfect sense, and we're very grateful that they do. I mean, it does take a lot of sorting out, but it's better than it going in the green bin, which will be general waste, almost certainly landfill, and without any sorting at all. So, like I say, it does work, but it does take quite a bit of labour to get it organised. Some more images of where we're either going to put receptacles or bags, or where there are some already. The one on the right, that again is Sawmill Cove, after probably a bank holiday weekend or something, and you can see that it's not just ocean plastic from a beach clean that's there. It's barbecues, beer bottles, nappies, dog poo bags, all that kind of thing as well. So it's a big contaminated load of gunk. So again, it needs managing properly. The stuff on the left, much more obviously marine waste litter. That's on the Prawl coast, really sort of wild area of coastline, beautiful, love it there. But again, you can see the need for a receptacle. Underneath there's thousands of pieces of microplastic that folk have collected off the beach, bottle tops and smaller, down to 5 mil. That takes an age to pick up off the grass. So again, a bag's a good idea. This is not up to date, I'm afraid. These are the locations where we have receptacles and infrastructure at the moment. And as I mentioned, we're going to double that this year in strategic locations, and we'll have a regular pickup service by boat to clear those. So we've also started using this app, which is really, something that has huge potential. And I'd really like to encourage anyone listening to perhaps download it or use another app similar to it that feeds into the right channels. This one's by Save the Waves Coalition. They're a US-based not-for-profit that started to protect surfing areas, but they've since branched out into much more broader environmental matters. And the app's really fantastic, actually. It's very simple to use. You just download it as you would a normal app. And you can see on the right-hand side, it presents a map with icons, and those icons denote what's been reported by the public. So if you're walking your dog and you encounter a fishnet on the beach, you can take a picture, geotag it, and upload a description to the app really quickly. I mean, it literally takes seconds. We then get pinged a real-time email about that upload, and we can then, of course, respond to it as quickly as we can. And it's worked very well. And on a few occasions, we've picked up trawl nets and monofilament nets and things like that off the back of a ping that's come from a member of the public. We obviously can't be everywhere all the time. It's absolutely impossible. So it's about getting everyone involved, involving the community of people who care about what's on the coastline. And it really can work. And there's no reason why all beach cleaning groups, if they're not already plugged into this sort of tech, easily could be. I don't think it's the only solution, but it's certainly working for us, and it's something we should definitely spend more time trying to develop. So, well, here's some examples of I guess one on the left is something I've put on, and what we've done is actually, I think there's more of an opportunity to tell the full story about something being reported as being on the coast. So it could be plastic pollution. They actually have a facility also for inappropriate development, for sewage release, water quality issues, and all the rest of it too. So you can choose the icon to suit what you're reporting. But I mentioned to the guys, I said, wouldn't it be great if we actually back up the story? If something's reported, can we then say, hey, this has been recovered and retrieved and recycled, just to close the loop on that, so people aren't left with the impression that there's just junk all over the coast and nothing's happening. So here's a shot of our yard. This is kind of out of date now, but it's still very relevant. That's what our yard generally looks like. We've got a space on a friend's farm, and this is where we take everything for sorting. And we've got 4 students there, D.V. students, who helped us out amongst all the junk. And you can see the sort of scale that we're talking about. It looks kind of fun and colourful from here, but as we all know, it's not really. It's plastic pollution, and it shouldn't be out there. That was our first skip that went to coastal recycling, badly sorted because we didn't know what we were doing, frankly. And we just didn't have the capacity or facilities to organise it. Things have got better now. These are the sort of quantities we're talking about. I think this is about 3 tons that went off to Exeter City Council for sorting and ultimately recycling. And there's been quite a number of loads like this. So, here we have a great shot. This is an example of the community collaborating and working really well together. We got a call from Coral Smith at Wembury Marine Centre, and she mentioned there was this huge kind of tangle of rope and stuff. It was a little confusing to work out precisely what it was. So I said, don't worry, we'll come armed to the teeth with all kinds of funky tools and knives and fun stuff like that. And when we got there, this is what we found. It's just one of those massive sort of, I don't know, I haven't invented a word for them yet, but they're massive tangles of rope, and they sort of get tangled up with everything else, including sea fans and all the rest of it. There is a word for it. I'll remember it in a second. So we all got stuck in. I had a couple of volunteers with me that week as well, brilliant blokes from London who came down from a big accountancy firm for the week. It was a brilliant surprise. They were fantastic. And we all just got stuck in. And we found that by using an Opinel bread knife, it just cut through this stuff like a knife through butter. And we soon got to grips with it and divided it up into about 12 chunks that fitted into the bags. And then we managed to lift it off the back of the beach. And then again, involving the community, the local landowner, the farmer there, tenant farmer, I believe, or runs a campsite. He was brilliant. He chucked it into the back of his pickup truck, and we got it to our truck and brought it back to base for sorting. So a great example. This is Coastal Recycling's base in Exeter. You can see the amount of material they're dealing with, tens of thousands of tons. And it's quite something when you see it, and you really do realize, what a challenge it is, and how that we're all contributing to this. I mean, geez, I'm no saint, I promise you, despite trying my best. A lot of this stuff, despite everyone's best efforts, won't get sorted. and it will end up in landfill just because of the, the impossibility of doing that in an effective way if it's contaminated. So school outreach, we're doing a lot more work like this now, talking to folk, educating, learning from them, of course, all the time as well. What are their concerns? What do they think should be done? And all the rest of it. But it's really rewarding, and it's it breaks up the week really well. Team days at the yard, always a good laugh, always enlightening, great ideas coming through. We use them as incubators. Let's all have a think about how things can be done better. How can we stop this happening? Just watching the clock, I'm yapping too much, aren't I? Like I say, we specialize in getting to areas that general folk can't reach, including MOD stretches of land on the Tamar. We were lucky to rope in the Royal Marines on this occasion. That was a brilliant day. We had about 12 Marines helping us for 4 or 5 hours, and we filled up about 2 skips, probably about 2.5 tons of plastic in 4 hours. It was unbelievable what was on that stretch of coastline, because of course you can't get to it unless you have permission from the MOD. So that was a fantastic thing. This is where we launched from in Plymouth. Yacht Haven Quay, fantastic. They launched the boat for us, and it's a great convenient spot. This is on one of the breakwaters in the Plymouth Marine Park, in our natural marine reserve. Again, it's unbelievable what you find and how much of it all the time. It's astonishing. Hazardous waste bags. I had a friend with a group of children on the beach yesterday at Fellstone from Forest and Beach, and again they found these hazardous waste bags. We found probably 6 or 7 over our time. No idea. If anyone knows where they're coming from, please let us know, because they're empty, thank goodness, but it's just unbelievable when you find one of those. Here's some of our awesome community, our volunteers. We've got about 120 on our books who are motivated and keen as mustard to get out with us whenever they can. We have such a great time. I totally massively appreciate their efforts and company, and the camaraderie. It's just brilliant. It makes it all very worthwhile. And here's some examples of just bad practice. Basically, a decommissioned pier pontoon. They're often made of concrete laminated to polystyrene. This one's just been dismantled, and you can see it's half wrecked. It was breaking up. I found huge chunks of this all over Plymouth Sound, and here's a piece with mussels growing on it. Fortunately, we're able to sort of engage with the community in Plymouth and get to the bottom of who owned it, etc. And it's since been removed and taken care of, which is a good thing. Okay, so here's one of our other projects that we're now really pleased to have got off the ground. It started as a kind of a way of us not having to deal with plastic pollution every day, week in, week out, bearing in mind we've been doing this over 4 years now. So Force for Nature started as active regeneration. It was from a small grant from Natural England to plant trees and get folk outside, interacting with nature and themselves and their community more. And it's now become a really special part of what we do. So it comes underneath the Till the Coast is Clear banner as a CIC, but it's kind of a separate but still a joined up project that we've actually branded separately, because it's becoming very special. We're hoping it's scalable and we can roll it out. So basically it's about getting a workforce to the folk who need help in tree planting, hedgerow establishment, building corridors, putting in dams, orchards, hugel beds for no dig organic gardens, all this kind of thing we've been helping with over the 1.5 years, and it's just been amazing. So here's some shots from our experiences out in the field. We work at 12 locations now. We've got 2 teams running, one from Dartmouth, one from Kingsbridge, and we get out there and we just get stuck in. But as I mentioned, it is massively about the community. It's massively about folk who have got a bit of time on their hands, perhaps a bit of motivation, perhaps they're between jobs, perhaps they finish working, perhaps they're whatever, it doesn't really matter. Perhaps they work from home, perhaps they're an author who has control of his day, or whatever it might be. But anyway, we get out into these amazing places, we do great work, and we eat lots of cake, and we drink lots of coffee, and we natter, and we take the mickey out of each other, and it's just a really fantastic thing to do. And I think this is a fundamentally important part of our the way we're going to get out of all these problems we're facing is by holding hands, joining together, getting stuck in, showing those who have the ability to change things rapidly that we do really care, and we're going to change from the bottom up if they're not going to pay attention and do things from the top down, which would be an awful lot easier, guys, wouldn't it? Just make some sensible decisions. Anyway, we can all vote with our feet on that one, can't we? sorry about all the food shots. It's just so important and such a wonderful part of all this. Brilliant venues we've been going to. Tree guard removal, another big job that we've been doing. Thousands of tree guards left on trees planted, as little as 6 years ago, as long as 25 years ago. But it's really important work to get the plastic out of the woodland and to get the trees breathing again. Wonderful location we go to, Deerwood Trust. We eat outside, we spend all day outside. Lisa's a fantastic cook. Brook Manor on the moors, just a spectacular place. Folk living in yurts in the woods in a sustainable way. Who wouldn't want to do that given the chance? You try getting that across the planners. Yeah, isn't that a sensible way of sustainably living? Why is that not a good idea? I can't think of a single reason. But unfortunately, every barrier known to creation will be put up if you attempt to live your life this way. People having fun outside. The wildlife, of course, maybe I should have dwelled more on this, but geez, we've been blown away by what we've learnt and seen and been exposed to, and the amazing stories of regeneration on places that have just been left, not to go completely wild necessarily, but an element of wilding, or just, backing off on the chemicals, backing off on the mowing, backing off on the flailing and the hedge trimming. It all makes such a huge difference, as we all now well know. And again, that's why it's so incredible that things still aren't done the right way everywhere. It's just common sense. And there's so many very clever people, way cleverer than I. I'm not an expert, as you may have picked up on. But yeah, this knowledge is all out there. We literally have all the answers. We just need to be given the opportunity to do things right. Foraging days as a kind of treat to the team. We'll be doing another one very soon. Just fantastic learning about what's around you. We could be filling our baskets with free organic food sustainably, if only we had the confidence and the knowledge to realize there's an abundance all around us. Can't beat a bit of tree hugging. Yes, embarrassing at first, but we do insist that people get into this, and it doesn't take much encouragement most of the time. Very important. This is our whale sculpture, or this is something we've been trying to get into Brixham. It's going to have a different life. This is another project we're doing, converting this old boat into a solar-powered launch for the community. This is Brixham Litter-Free Seas. I'm just looking at the clock. I think I'm running out of time. And here's the whale sculpture before we started to dress it up. And the idea is, again, to use something quite large and punchy to raise awareness and inspire folk to, to help with the cleanup and to radiate positive change. Here's it with a bit of stuff we've recovered off the coast. It's still a work in progress. We're still looking for a home for it, and hopefully we'll have that resolved soon. We're also building a litter boom to go into Brixham Harbour from stuff that we've recovered off the coast. We've got hundreds of buoys, bobber buoys, barrels to make a litter boom that will stop litter from the port blowing into the seawall, which is actually a real big problem there. So trying to basically use this material for a second life, upcycling it in a positive way. Another project is free diving to locate ghost gear in Brixham Harbour in the shallow areas. So we're trying to train up free divers to help us with that project. It's a slow start, but we're getting there. We're hoping to kick it off properly in spring. That was our first foray into Fishcombe Cove. It was a really successful morning. The guys managed to find all this stuff, and we hauled it up into the boat and got it ashore. So I'm sure there'll be some questions perhaps at the end, but in terms of what we can all do, I know it's incredibly daunting, but I think if you focus on your community, whatever that might mean to you, whether it's the guys around you at work or at home or just where you live, or if it's further afield, even online, who cares? It's a community nonetheless. But just join good, solid, positive, go-get kind of organizations, and we can all make an incredible positive difference. I do like to think that every decision we make is actually crucial. It's pivotal. It might be an off-the-cuff kind of decision to buy something, but it really does need some thought. If you have, give yourself a moment to think about, do you really need it? Who made it? Where's it come from? Is it appropriate? Can we make something to, supplement it? And if we all kind of get into that mentality, and I'm still learning as well, it's not easy in this consumer society we live in. But I think it is really important. If someone's not doing a good job, we should just disengage with them. If a bank's abusing its privileges, if it's investing in fossil fuels and armaments, etc., then why would you bank with them? Why would you have your pension plan wrapped up in an organization that's spending its profit on ruining the planet and you know, waging war? Doesn't make any sense to me at all. So just move your account. It takes a bit of effort, but it's just do it. It's a simple win. The board members and shareholders will soon say, hang on a minute, I think we're doing something wrong here. If we're indifferent about it, we don't do that, then they will just carry on, believe you me, pocketing the profits and wreaking havoc out there. And of course, action, as we know, speaks much louder than any words. So my advice is always just to get on with it, even if it's a crazy idea. It's probably worth doing. So just get stuck in, have a go, or join someone else who's doing something already. So here's some brands who I, you know, genuinely think are doing the right thing, or as best as they possibly can within the constraints of producing consumerist items. But lots of these brands won't need any introduction to you. They're the sort of people you'd want to work for. They're either B Corps or aspiring B Corps. They're organizations that put people, planet first. Profit is a sort of distant third almost, and profit, if generated, is used for wholesome things. So seek out the organizations that are doing great things, you know, locally, further afield. It's definitely worth it. Education is just so fundamentally important. There's so much great literature out there. There's a wealth of videos, films online, as we all know. It can get a bit much at times, so, you know, take it with baby steps. But there's some phenomenal literature out there. Paul Hawkins on the right is a particular favorite of mine, because it's not just about the doom and gloom, it's about solutions. So very near to the end, guys, this is one of my favorite, if not my favorite place on the South Devon coast. Some of you may know where it is, in which case I implore you to keep it a secret. You can only get there by boat. It's very, very cool. When I show folk and ask them where they think it is, they go, oh, New Zealand, west coast of Ireland, you know, all these dramatic and exotic places, but it isn't. It's you know, literally maybe half an hour from where I live. So just finally, guys, like as I mentioned earlier, all the solutions are out there, more or less. There's still some work to be done, but generally speaking, there's a solution to all of our problems. We just need to embrace them and get out of, you know, each other's way and get out of our own way on many occasions and just make good decisions. So thank you ever so much for your time, and sorry if I've gone on a little bit. Yeah, I think we're ready for questions and someone else to talk now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. That's absolutely inspiring. If you could stop sharing your screen so we can see your lovely face a little bit clearer, and then I can then add Coral to the fray.
Okay, let me find the cursor. Here we go.
Okay, brilliant. So just add Coral as well. So if I ask Coral to start your video, and then I can add you to the panel, as it were. Okay, there we go. Brilliant. Well, I appreciate everyone was quite immersed in watching Gary's talk, which is absolutely fantastic. So if you do have questions and you didn't manage to put them in the chat during the talk, please do so now, and we can try and get through those. But we do have some questions for you, Gary, and probably for you as well, Coral. So we'll try and get through those. So I suppose the first one is possibly a bit of a nuanced one, and I'm not sure there's necessarily a clear answer. So how efficient are constructed wetlands in addressing the issue of plastic pollution in beaches and rivers?
Was that for me or Coral?
I think that's probably one for you, Gary, but I mean, to be honest, I know obviously we do a lot of work with wetlands, but mainly we're looking at different kinds of pollution that extend beyond plastic, so it might not be quite a question for this evening.
Okay, run it by me once again. I missed the first part.
So how efficient are constructed wetlands in addressing the issue of plastic pollution in beaches and rivers?
Yeah, well, I'm really sorry. That's way beyond my expertise. Yeah, apologies to the questioner. Hopefully one of you guys with more expertise can answer.
Yeah, I'll have a go. I think what the person is asking is if constructed wetlands can trap plastic that's coming down the rivers before it enters the beaches and the sea. Again, that's not my area of expertise either, but I would imagine, you know, our wetlands, our salt marsh, seagrass, all of those habitats are not only good at collecting nutrients and water, but would trap plastic along along with that, but that's plastic still got to, it's still out there in the environment, so it's not necessarily solving the problem, but nature-based solutions are certainly part of it. And I know that seagrass has antiseptic properties in that it is able to potentially remove some of the toxins that attach themselves to plastic. So not only is plastic itself deadly to marine life, which can ingest it and get caught up in it, but plastic actually attracts toxins on top of it. So if an animal's eating the plastic, it's getting those chemicals along with it as well. And habitats like seagrass have properties within them that can denature some of those chemicals. So we should probably forward that question to one of our colleagues who's much more able to answer that specific question about wetland habitats. But I certainly think it could help, but obviously we'd much rather that the plastic wasn't in the aquatic environment in the first place.
That was very succinctly put, Coral. And I think actually I didn't know that thing about seagrass. So I think that was worth asking, even if we don't necessarily have all the answers. The next question is pressure being put on the fishing industry to come up with a biodegradable fishing nets, as the most of the rubbish we find on our local beaches, obviously tiny bits of fishing nets?
Yes, there is pressure being put on the industry. It's a difficult one in the sense that the reason why they use what they use is because it's so incredibly efficient and relatively cheap, and it's strong and it's light and it doesn't rot. And that's the problem with plastic, isn't it? It's so useful in our daily lives, and in the fishing industry in particular, it's the perfect product for the job that they do. It's ruthlessly efficient, both as a killing machine, frankly, in some respects. Efforts are being made, experiments have been done with biodegradables and things, but again, it just comes with a whole host of issues as well, i.e. it's often double the price, it's half as strong, it might be as light, etc., but it just doesn't do the job as well. Therefore, the costs increase, putting pressure on the whole system, and so forth. So, I mean, I think what folk normally find is called dolly rope, and I really wish I'd mentioned this, but so many people, very few people know what it is unless they're in the industry, and this is really bad, frankly. This stuff is attached to trawl nets to protect the trawl net from abrasion on the surface of the seabed, which of course, the second I said, why is a trawl net dragging along the seabed? That sounds horrific. It is horrific and it shouldn't happen, but it does happen. That's how most of our catch is caught. That's got to stop. But anyway, in the meantime, while it does happen, instead of the net wearing out, because it's an expensive item, they use dolly rope, which is sacrificial, made from plastic, and it shreds off the net and it's added back on at the end of the trawl to shred off again. And that's why you find endless amounts of orange, blue, and black dolly rope particles everywhere. It's actually there on purpose, you could argue.
That's shocking. And yeah, I think I've learned from experience that a lot of it's fishing gear when you're kind of doing beach cleans, and it's often that gear that's the hardest to clean up if it gets trapped in with the kind of rocks and in the kind of pebbles and things like that.
Yeah, sure. Just to add that there is, that's maybe a little bit damning on the industry, but there is a lot of effort and money being spent on improving techniques. Because it's more profitable. If you can, catch more fish, use less gear, and spend more time, it's in their interest. Which, let's be honest, it is a profit-driven business. There's no two ways about that. So you've got things like disco fishing, which I think some of the universities are experimenting with, attracting scallops into nets using lights and this sort of thing, which potentially is fantastic, but is yet to be sort of proven on a commercial scale.
Yeah, that's intriguing. Well, hopefully this research will continue and expand, and hopefully there'll be some sort of financial incentive from the government or elsewhere to clear up and kind of reduce the impact. Another question is around kind of the fact that obviously we focus on beach cleans a lot, but a lot of the rubbish comes from inland. So you find rubbish in hedgerows and roadsides, whether that's kind of it falling out of a truck or if it's someone throwing it out the window. What can we do to pressurise councils to tackle this problem, do you think?
Well, geez, I sympathise with councils, who are strapped for manpower, resources, etc. I mean, frankly, we need to tackle it at a social community level, don't we? You know, nothing falls out of a truck window or a car window, it's thrown out of the window. There might be, you know, 1 in 1,000 incidents that's an accident, but basically 99% of the trash you see on the roadsides is purposely there. It's illegal litter, it's pollution, simple as that. So it's a behavioral thing, it's a community thing, it's a social problem we have. You know, yeah, I think one way or another we somehow have to communicate that it's just not acceptable to use our countryside and ocean as a litter bin.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think off the back of that, I'd like to ask my own question, which is, do you feel that sometimes you're preaching to the converted in some ways, that when you're talking to people, that's not normally people who have opened the door to you and more likely to listen to what you have to say, whereas we're not necessarily reaching those that would see the countryside as somewhere where they can litter and they can not treat it with the same respect?
Yeah, I think that's a really great observation. And I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we silo ourselves a little bit, don't we? I mean, we're in a community this evening of folk who are, you know, plugged into all of this. I'm sure nothing I've told you is necessarily that enlightening, or you didn't know already. That is the problem with things like this, isn't it? We're not getting through to the folk who, you know, in their ignorance, you know, may not know that it is a problem. I mean, that is the bottom line. And I think the same can be said for all of these, you know, climate crisis issues and biodiversity crisis issues, is that, you know, we speak to like-minded folk most of the time. What we really should be doing is being much more braver, or being much more creative and trying to get out there and talk and break down barriers and win hearts and minds and get more people. That's why I think engaging people with nature is the most important thing, because when they fall in love with it, it becomes a selfish motivation, and that's what human beings basically are. If you fall in love with something, you are going to protect it. That's the way we've been designed. So I think we've got to keep showing people that nature is where they need to be for their well-being and their futures.
And of course, I would absolutely agree with you on that one. Can I ask, so the next question is around kind of polluters paying the price, and kind of one of the solutions potentially being around the fishing industry and global companies taking more responsibility. And should even fishing gear be traced back to the owner? Should they kind of have, you know, it's that kind of carrot and stick narrative of kind of, you know, showing people how amazing nature is, but also potentially trying to kind of combat, you know, behavior that we don't want to see?
Yeah, I think absolutely there should be definitely much more emphasis put on, you know, the responsibility of the polluter, of the manufacturer even. You know, there's been a lot of talk around, you know, extended manufacturer responsibility, that sort of thing. The problem with, of course, things that go on at sea, it's out of sight, out of mind, and it's so hard to police. And, you know, I think the future is going to need some much more, you know, hands-on management. But yeah, people have to start putting their hands up and saying, yes, we work in a dangerous, you know, industry. Losses are inevitable, but here you go, guys. Here's some of our vast profit to help with the cleanup operation, and let's all work at this together to try and improve things. That would be a refreshing change. That's not to say that isn't going on. That is going on in places, and we're making a little bit of progress ourselves, which is really refreshing. And I think we may have reached some form of a point where it's going to become socially acceptable for them to do the right thing.
Thank you for that. I think we've reached kind of 7 o'clock now, so I think I'm going to wrap it up. But I'd like to ask kind of one final question. I suppose this is directed to you and Coral. It's obviously it can be very disheartening to see the kind of impact that plastic pollution and other kinds of pollution are having on our marine world. What keeps you going? What keeps you kind of moving and being inspired, and kind of keeps you doing the fantastic work that you're doing? Kind of, can you give hope and kind of some advice to people who are potentially feeling a bit kind of overwhelmed by the task at hand? Do
you want to go, Coral?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. That's a really good question, because I think eco burnout and eco anxiety, for those of us who live and work you know, in conservation, it can be really difficult at times. And I think just like in general life, you can have good days and bad days. I think if we're thinking about the issue of plastic pollution, it's about doing, you know, it's about doing your bit, finding your patch, finding your special place, and doing your best to look after that, setting a good example for others, mobilising your community. For me, you know, the day that Gary came out to help us with that rope last season was, I mean, you said, Gary, that, you know, it sliced through the net like butter, the knife, like a knife through butter, but actually it was probably the hardest day's work Matt and I had all season. You know, it's incredibly difficult to you know, cut up net like that. Thankfully it doesn't wash up at Wembury that often, but just the fact that, you know, I got in touch with Gary the day before he came, the morning after, the local farmer got involved, you know, it was like a job done in a day. So I think knowing that there's others out there that are also doing it, and you know, working together and meeting different people, definitely keeps you going. So I think a combination of acting local, and still trying to encourage that behaviour change in others, but also to campaign for more legislation and protection, because, you know, we can't do this alone. There's so many people out there litter picking and beach cleaning more than ever before. You could argue that, you know, volunteers are doing the council's job for them in some places, but plastic production is just ramping up, and it's as high as it's ever been. So we have to try and do what we can at all the different levels, basically. But I'll pass to you now, Gary.
Thanks, Coral. Yeah, absolutely echo everything there. It is, you know, you have good days, bad days, but on the whole, you have to stay focused, and you have to take responsibility, and you have to think, right, you know, nobody's going to fix this for us. You know, we have to take responsibility and do whatever we can, whether that's by voting in and out the appropriate leaders, and what isn't that the best way of sending a message and ramping up the speed of legislation change? Just asking them to be nice and do the right thing doesn't work, as we know. Just don't vote for them, even if it means personal. I think that's the biggest part of taking responsibility is accepting that you might be taxed more, or you might have to lose a bit of your you know, spare time or your spare money, whatever it might be. You have to be prepared to take, you know, some hits, to sacrifice things. I don't give a monkeys if I earn less, if there's better environmental conditions for ourselves, for our children, and for nature. Who would really be bothered by that? You've got to be ignorant beyond belief to think it's better to have a bank balance stuffed full of cash than it is an environment swimming with plastic and sewage and rubbish that you can't enjoy. What use is the cash anyway if the planet's about to implode? Anyway, this is supposed to be about positivity. I'm really sorry. Hey, look, it's tough, but take heart in what Coral said. There's so many awesome people out there. You just got to find them. And if you can't find them, give us a call. We're trying to create a group where you are, because they are out there, and everybody that I know wants to do something positive. They just don't necessarily know how. And presenting them with an opportunity just to dip their toe in, and that's an important point. Don't, you know, baby steps. Just take this one step at a time. You can't dive right in to the cold water head first. You've just got to stick your toe in first. So yeah, take heart in that there's thousands of people like you. Most people really want to do something positive, and if we all mobilize together and do what needs to be done, I genuinely think we can see some incredibly positive change in the next few years.
And actually, Gary, that leads nicely on to someone's comment, which is they kayak regularly in the South Hams. How can they join on one of your cleanup days? And I'm assuming the answer is probably get in touch, look on your website, see what kind of exists.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. That sounds brilliant. I apologize, our website is woefully out of date. It's not up to speed with where we're at. We're working on that in the background, but we tend to rely on WhatsApp groups to relate to our guys. So you can get in touch with me via the website. By all means, do that, please. And we'll add you to the appropriate WhatsApp group. And when we're going out somewhere, we basically announce it to the WhatsApp group, like where, when, and why. It's just a really efficient way of working. So yeah, otherwise just pick up stuff.
And I would say that
every piece you collect, you know, is one less piece going into the sea. And although it's never ending, you know, you just have to think of it like that. You know, potentially that's one life saved.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Coral. Whenever I pick up a nurdle or something, instead of going, oh God, another nurdle, I think, right, that could be the one, that microgram that tips us over the edge, or tips something over the edge, starts a trophic cascade or whatever. And you know, so if you think of it that way, it makes it much easier to digest.
Exactly. And I think it's worth saying that obviously, Gary, you're trying to kind of expand your efforts across the coast, but there, as you've obviously mentioned, there are lots of community groups doing what you're doing, and it's just about, you know, searching through Facebook, through Google, through whatever kind of medium you use for communities to find kind of someone working in your patch. There's undoubtedly going to be someone, and it's probably worth pointing out that Wembury Marine Centre is also organising their own beach clean on the 1st of June, and so check out their website to sign up and come along and help us make Wembury a little bit tidier and a little bit more lovely to visit. And also obviously Wembury Marine Centre is open to visitors in general, and we've got lots of lovely events Coral and her team have organised throughout the summer holidays from about 1st of April onwards. So do have a look at the website, get in touch, and yeah, get stuck in, because it's never an odd opportunity to remind yourself of how amazing our marine natural world is. And as you say, Gary, that's where all of this comes from. It's kind of the love for nature that is the solution, because if people love nature, then they're likely to protect it. So the more we can do that, the better, really. So I think I'll probably end there if that's okay. Thank you, Gary, for that really inspirational talk, and for Coral for answering the tricky and the not so tricky questions. And thank you to you all for being a very patient audience. Brilliant questions, and yeah, have a lovely evening, and yeah, do get involved. We've got a Wilder Communities initiative, so if you're thinking you might want to kind of start your own beach clean or kind of group, do kind of get in touch. We're here to support you as a Wildlife Trust. So yeah, thank you all and good night.